This is by far the craziest concept for a podcast that I feel like we've ever had. But I was stoked that you were down for it because the first time that we ever met was an 8-hour session and left that being like, oh, I definitely want this to be one of my homies, whether or not
Yeah, that
we
was
do
cool.
tattoos again. But did you have any hesitation about being able to tattoo and podcast at the same time?
A little bit, yeah. The brain fog might pop up
Yeah.
a time or two, but we'll see. We'll see if you sit still.
That was the thing for me too, is I was thinking about like, how can I stay locked in enough where I can still have like a thorough conversation without getting sidetracked by like the pain of a tattoo, or like you've just got something that's constantly nagging at you
Right.
to lose your train of thought. But do you find that it's easier for you to have conversations when you're working on something?
I guess depends on who I'm talking to and how much we get along.
Okay.
It would blow your mind how many people come in here for an 8-hour session and don't speak hardly at all. It's strange. It's kind of a weird interaction on the regular. The phone the phone addiction. It's crazy. Everybody's got one, and yeah, me not being the most extroverted person, it's hard to start conversations when somebody's glued to their phone.
Right. Did that surprise you when you first started tattooing? Was like the human aspect of having a different person in your chair every day and trying to deal with that dynamic outside of the art?
Definitely, yeah. So many new skills to learn as far as people skills that I wasn't equipped. So that first couple years was hard to just learn sort of regular basic skills that sort of need to be, I guess,
Or like
Sorry about that.
maybe like honed in a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, as somebody who's not uh, extroverted and quite shy, that first couple years was quite difficult to just learn how to interact with people more, I guess.
Did it ever make you hesitant, or did it ever make you feel any sort of like challenge about going into tattoo?
For some reason, no. As somebody who overthinks everything and is plagued by it, for whatever reason, I didn't overcomplicate the start to my tattoo career.
Okay.
I just kind of ordered the stuff and jumped right into it. It's kind of a tricky thing to get into because you either have to,
You're sure.
you either have to find somebody to teach you, and get like an apprenticeship, or you can kind of go the ghetto route that I went and just order everything to your front doorstep and start tattooing your leg or your friend or fake skin.
Right.
So yeah, that was how I got my start to it.
Would you say that starting tattooing was one of the more natural things that you ever did, or that is one of the easiest things for you to start? Because it takes a lot to just say fuck it and order everything and then just get going.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't put much thought into it for whatever reason. I had sort of an intuitive feeling that it would work for whatever delusional reason. But yeah, I had always liked tattoos and had been getting them for some years. So I figured, why not try it, On top of that, it was during COVID. So I had a lot of extra time and energy that I was looking to put somewhere. So yeah, just kind of ordered the stuff, started pumping out a lot of bad work for some years, and here we are.
Do you remember a moment where that I don't know if you want to call it delusion, but like everything came together and you were like, yeah, I'm just going to do this. Like this is going to be my thing? Or is that something that happened more gradually?
I think although I was really, really bad off the rip, I I knew I could get good at it, and I knew it was just gonna take some practice, or a lot of practice, and some years. I'm still in the midst of those years, and by no means do I think I've arrived, but yeah, sort of that self belief within it was there for whatever reason.
Where do you think that where do you think that came from? Or why do you think that you knew that it was something that you were willing to put that kind of time into?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it came from. Um, I think like even before I started tattooing, I was passionate about tattoos, and it was one of my few passions in life that I've ever had. So I was constantly drawn back to uh, the idea of what if I could do this, and I would always write myself out like, no, I can't do that. I'm not creative enough. I'm not I'm not talented enough to do that. Like it's a very intimidating thing to get into, right? So
Mm-hmm.
as podcasting is, um, yeah, I guess just throwing ourselves into the fire at least gets us somewhere, you know.
For sure. I love the idea that life happens for us. It doesn't happen to us. And it seems like as much of a crazy thing as COVID was during the world, it seems like the timing of when you started tattooing and the fact that there wasn't a whole lot going on in the world and all that kind of stuff, it almost seems like that might have been like COVID might have happened for you so that you could get into your career. But do you think at all about like the timing and how everything came together for you?
Yeah, I do. It feels like COVID to me was feels like a complete blessing, and that almost sounds bad because for so many people it was a terrible time, and so many people lost everything. I just happened to be one of the lucky ones where it was exactly what I needed. I needed to isolate and have that time and space to just think. And so yeah, what about for you? How was that time for you, and kind of what happened?
It was interesting. I had just graduated during COVID. We went to spring break. My No, it was so my junior year. COVID really kicked off. We went to spring break, and then came back, and they were like, "The semester's over. Whatever grades you got right now are probably the grades that you're just gonna have, and we're calling it good." Perks of going to a private school, and so we were done, and then the rest of school was online, and I ended up getting a job during the time that I was in school because there really wasn't much else going on. And when I graduated, I was working at this marketing agency, and fortunately, I ended up on an account where they were based out of Boston and Paris, and they did a bunch of trade shows and different stuff. So while everyone was sitting tight during COVID, I was actually traveling a decent amount, and it was a really cool way to see different things because I got to experience Paris and Germany and a bunch of different places in times where there was a lot of regulation because of COVID,
Hmm.
but the like volume of tourists and a lot of the different stuff it was so much lower. So I feel like I got to have a little bit more of like an authentic experience in some of those like first places I ever got to travel to. Um, and I really enjoyed that aspect of COVID where I wasn't in one of those positions where like I lost a job or I just had nothing going on. Like I was kind of like hitting my stride right in the middle of it. So
Similar
I had
experience, kind
fun.
of.
Yeah, exactly. The My favorite part of COVID though was um, one of our teammates, Lynn Cooper, had they had this house over in like the Tree District where all those like kind of older houses are by Pioneer Park, and they had a garage gym that was in their like detached side garage in their house.
Mhm.
And so like 5 days a week we'd go over there and we'd drag all of his lifting equipment out into the middle of the driveway, and we just go lift in his driveway for like 5 days a week, and there wasn't anything else going on. So even when it was like cold and stuff like that, we'd roll up with like cotton gloves, and it was just like the most simple time of all time. So I actually kind of enjoyed COVID, because I don't think I really had a lot riding on anything at the time. It's just very free.
Yeah, we're lucky for that, man. So many people lost everything in COVID.
Seriously.
And are still trying to come back from the closure of their restaurant or business.
Right.
Yeah, definitely grateful to not be in that position, you know?
I'm very curious how, if there will be any studies or if there will be any data that comes out about people in our generation who went through a lot of very impactful time, like a lot of very impactful moments while COVID was going on. Like you've got people who, they were graduating high school, they were graduating college, they were just getting into their career. Like they were already doing very impactful life stuff. But the way that they did it because of COVID is so much different than most people's experience. And I'm curious how that will play out from like social aspects to, you know, we went through probably one of the highest times of adversity as far as being a creative or a business owner or an entrepreneur. And that was just like the introduction to really both of our careers. So I'm curious how that kind of thing will play out over time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think that so many people, the isolation didn't serve them very much. They lost so many interaction skills. Like even I swear that I noticed post COVID that people are less, just in my hometown, less communicative.
Right.
They come in and it's more phone than it was pre-COVID. I don't know, maybe that's just the type of clientele I attract.
Could be.
Or the type of people that I have been around, but
right.
I seem to notice that.
What other things have you noticed about people in general, as you've been tattooing? Because I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think that you almost end up being in a position where you end up, you know, having to be a therapist at times and a friend at others, and sometimes you just have to sit and stare at somebody for 8 hours. But what kind of things have you learned about just people in general over the course of your tattoo career?
Yeah, it's kind of a strange interaction, if you will, between me and the client. You know, some people, it's a big deal to come and get a tattoo, and you know, they've been thinking about this for a really long time, and they're nervous, and they just want to distract themselves on the phone for 8 hours. And some people are looking for a real human exchange with me. So it kind of just depends on who's in the chair that day. But yeah, I've learned so much about people, and I've never been around this many people in my life.
Right.
You know, it's someone new almost every day, and it's one of my favorite things about the job is just meeting people and hearing people's story and what they have to say about different things. And yeah, I'm sure you can relate in your field as well.
For sure. I'm curious for you if the majority of the time that you're talking to people, if you've got like multi-hour blocks to talk to them, right? Like if you've got, call it 2+ hours while you're tattooing somebody, if that's kind of like the baseline interaction that you tend to have with people, does it change your opinion, or does it change like the flow of conversation that you have when it's just kind of like your day-to-day, like running into people at the store or seeing people when you're out or that kind of thing? Like, has it changed your, I guess, like your taste for which kind of conversation you like to be a part of?
Definitely. I like that question, or that point as well. Yeah, having so many like transactional experiences tattooing where there's not much conversation. My client may not be looking for much conversation, which is totally okay. But it's really kind of made me quite intolerant of meaningless conversation, because that's how a lot of people like to sort of fill the space when they're uncomfortable. And I'm guilty of it too, of course. I think we all are. When things feel a little awkward,
Yeah.
trying to fill the space with small talk.
Right.
So yeah, outside of tattooing is I try to just be a real human as much as I can,
Right.
and carry the skills that I've learned through tattooing, as far as communication goes, into my my life outside of work.
What kind of things as you were like as you started to notice your intolerance for small talk, what were the things that like really started to become pet peeves, or the changes that you started to notice in yourself as that started to bother you?
Also, this is hard.
Yeah, for sure, bro.
This is hard. I'm getting more used to it though. We'll get there. The focus on tattooing and having a
Right.
constant conversation,
Yeah.
because usually there's more breaks.
Right. Especially, and I feel like you're also a very thoughtful person, like when we're talking off camera, like off mic too. So it's, you got time to think about it. One of my favorite concepts in podcasting and in conversation in general is, let the silence do its work. And what I love about that is, and it's one of the reasons why I like talking to you so much, is because, I think that just like what you were saying is some people get uncomfortable as they're feeling that dead space of a conversation. They just start to say some random things to try to fill it. What I appreciate about talking to you so often is, you might take 10 seconds in the middle of a conversation to gather your thoughts about something, but I know that what you're saying is intentional and that like there's thought behind it.
I appreciate that. That's why podcasting is so impressive. Like I'm so impressed by like people who are real, I guess, conversationalists, and they like you can't take that 10-second, 20-second pause when you're in, like I did earlier,
Right.
And froze up. You can't really do that and be at the top of your field in the podcast industry or like live TV. I'm so impressed by live announcers who can just off the fly deliver every time.
Right.
So impressive to me.
Have you ever found yourself, especially in conversation while people are in your chair, have you ever found yourself feeling like you have to improve as a conversationalist, or like change your tendencies, like try not to take as long of pauses or try not to be as insightful because not everybody's willing to like go to that deep level?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's just like anything. Talking is a skill, and I know you can relate. Constantly getting better every day at just learning how to deliver better and how to communicate better. I think about where I would be without tattooing, because like we were just talking about, being forced to conversate and interact with a stranger every day is quite challenging. It's quite uncomfortable a lot of the time, and it is more so on me as the service provider to try to make my client as comfortable as I can. And as somebody who doesn't have much of a history of knowing how to doing that, it's been hard, but I think that I've made some strides for sure.
Has it maybe forced a little bit of personal development for you in different areas, having to have a different person that you need to talk to every day?
Yeah, for sure. I think just being around different people every day, different people bring out different views, and you might point out something that I've never heard before, and then the next person might point out something about me that I've never heard before. So, I think that's important. for me to not only just within um, my workspace, but in my life outside of work is to hear what the multitude of people have to say about different things and expose myself to different opinions about whatever it may be.
Yeah, almost like leaning into a conversation or approaching it like regardless of what your initial idea about a person is, that they might have something to offer you
Totally.
with their perspective or with, what with whatever kind of conversation you end up getting into.
Totally. Just being open to it, Like I think I can learn something from every single person. Even if it's a little kid, they might they might teach me something about I don't know, the new toy or the new video game.
I think kids have some of the best perspective ever too. One of my favorite, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but one of my favorite quotes, I think it was about, God, what's the famous painter? Picasso. He got a lot of critique for some of his best works looking like they were, like they could have been painted by a child. And one of my favorite quotes that I'm probably going to butcher is, when we're young, we learn how to paint, we learn how to create. And then once we get there, we spend the next 60 years learning how to create like a child again.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy because being a child, you're so you're so pure, and then eventually, things get sort of washed out of us, and that that inner child starts to become further and further away. At least for me, this is kind of what happened to me.
Yeah.
And then learning now how do I get back to that? How do I tap back into that little kid who was so simple,
Right.
I think we overcomplicate things as we grow and become adults, and I think there's a lot of beauty in looking back at who you once were and trying to be that person again.
I agree. What are the things that you've noticed as you reflect on the qualities you had as a kid that are things that you'd like to get back to?
I think one of them being just simplicity. Like when I was a kid, it didn't take much to make me happy. Just a bike ride with my friend.
Dude, that's the best. That would still be lit, by the way.
Yeah, we should do that.
Let's do it.
We should do that before I leave. Yeah, just simplicity. A crunchy apple.
Yep.
See, you got that right there. Yeah, playing sports and so far removed from technology and the internet. Don't get me wrong, I love to play video games, but the main thing for me was to just be outside with my friends and interact. Have real experiences with other people. And I've noticed as I get older, it's harder to find people who I'm running away, huh?
Yeah, you're good.
Harder to find people who share that similar want. Get around people and they pull out their phone and all of a sudden I want to leave. I don't want to be around that. So it's really rare to find like-minded people.
Right.
And I would rather just isolate if I'm not able to find that like mind. I'm kind of curious to how you think about that. Would you rather be alone if you're not able to be around someone who is very similar to you, or what's your approach to?
Yeah, I think so, dude. It's
friends?
yeah, especially with friends that are like it's a very intentional friendship. I think that one of the most lonely places you can be is in a full room. And that to me is what that looks like is when you're around people who aren't interested in connecting, or they're not interested in connecting about things that truly matter. Get lost in a lot of small talk or in politics or in sports or in things that don't really help you connect as friends or as humans or individuals,
Mhm.
that feels very lonely to me because I feel like it's a little bit of like time wasted because you have this golden opportunity whenever you're around somebody to learn about whatever book that their life has written so far. And, you know, the human condition is such an interesting thing. Like that concept of Sonder, like when you realize that everybody everywhere has just as complex a story as you do, and like it's all just this thing. I think I'm just genuinely curious about people's experience. And so it's very lonely to me when you get around those conversations where it's just like it feels shallow or it feels like they're almost checking some kind of social box about like, yeah, I spent time with friends today, or I went out to this social gathering or this bar or this, you know, whatever, just to be around people. Like I think that concept of like being around people just to, it's almost like filling space in a negative in like the dead space of a conversation. It seems like it's very shallow, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me how certain people are able to have casual friendships, and they enjoy that. They enjoy having sort of friends that you really don't know that much about the person, but when you're around them, it's good vibes, and I can't understand that.
Right.
And who am I to say that's a negative thing? But I think we're synced up on not being able to do that.
Yeah. One of the things that I appreciate about you and a being in your circle and being somebody who you're um, willing to share ideas with has been one of the coolest things for me. But I've always appreciated the company that you do keep because I feel like you really do lean into that. Like it seems like you'd rather be alone than be lonely in a full room. And I'm curious for you what kind of traits you look for in people to allow them to have your undivided time after you've been talking to somebody random for 8 hours,
Mhm.
and like still be willing to spend some of your social battery like hanging out with people outside of work.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that yeah, being around a stranger almost every day for 8 hours leaves me with very little social battery left when I leave work.
Yeah.
So I think that's major in part to why I um, am quite picky with who I'm willing to spend time with outside of work. Um, but I think people who share a similar um, people who see life through a similar lens to me is who I typically get along with the most. Somebody who's open minded and loving, caring, loyal. Um, the rare ones, the rare traits, the rare people. I think. Um, yeah, I'm excited to be in a bigger city where there's more people.
Right.
Um, yeah, the ones that I have found in Montana, in my hometown, are super solid, and I really ride for all of them.
Right. Is there does knowing that about yourself and knowing that you do tend to keep a smaller circle of people who are maybe I'll just wrap that up in like a general statement of being intentional, if that's fair, about like who they are, what they care about, all those sorts of things. Does that feel like a bit of pressure, or does it feel like a steep mountain to climb to move to a new place and find people who fit that description?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily pressure. I think we all desire quality people in our life, but I'm at a point now where I'm okay with being alone. If there's not the right people around, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with going alone, going home alone for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so I think I find a lot of freedom in that, knowing that I'll be all right if it takes a little bit longer to find more like-minded people and more people that I get along with.
Right. Has that tendency, being okay being alone, or even like seeking that time alone, Is that something that you've always naturally gravitated to, or is that something that you've kind of grown into?
Yeah, I think we're all born leaning one way or the other as far as being introverted or extroverted, and I'm definitely a textbook introvert. But it seems like I'm just becoming more and more introverted over time.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Even though you meet more and more people and spend more and more time talking to people.
right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's tricky to break down. And I'm constantly thinking about that. Like, how am I getting more introverted when I'm
Right.
being more I'm social as ever, you know? Where are you at with that? Like,
Well, I'm curious about that. I'm curious about that though, because it seems like so many times, especially when we get a chance to drop in for a couple hours at a time, I can tell that there's been a lot of things that you've been thinking about. Like it's almost always that you've got a gang of quotes or like things that you've watched or read or something like that, or ideas that you've been breaking down for some time. And I feel like I've been in a fortunate spot where I just get to hear about all of them at once. But it is something that I've noticed that it seems like that probably comes from introversion. Like it comes from taking a lot of samples from the world, like a sample from a conversation with somebody in your chair and a sample from something on social media or something that you saw on TV. And I think I can kind of like level with you there that it's even though you're out and about speaking a lot and all of that, it's not necessarily that those conversations or those situations are getting all of your attention or like emotional energy, and that like the actual processing is happening in the background, and that's kind of where the introversion exists. It's like you're not necessarily giving 100% of yourself to some of those conversations or some of those ideas because it's like a different part of you that does that introspection.
yeah, I think that's quite accurate. I would say it's for the most part dealing with people who on a day to day who I'm not necessarily aligned with, and um, that's totally okay. So, not we're not having these type of conversations. Me and these these clients that are in my chair. That's quite rare. Where you meet somebody who you're aligned with, and you can spill your heart out and feel comfortable enough doing that. Uh, yeah, it makes me really appreciative when I'm able to do that, or outside of work when I get to spend quality time with you or um, other people that I'm close with. Uh, Makes me very appreciative.
Yeah, I think it's important to have those people that you can go to with big ideas and with different things like that, because I think that really is where the loneliness sets in, is where you don't have some kind of outlet to take those conversations or take those ideas. Especially when you've got physically somebody sitting in front of you every day, or you're in a position where, you're a business person and you're constantly around people, or if you're a bartender and you're around people all the time, like there are lots of different situations that people find themselves in where they're around people, but they don't have anywhere for those ideas to go. I think that, you and I have been very fortunate to have people around us who do think deeply about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's one of the biggest blessings ever. But one of the things that we were chatting about not too long ago when we went to lunch with our boy Christian was the idea of free will, and that was one of my favorite ones that you've hit me with in the last couple months, because it was random to me because you and I hadn't dropped in for long enough that I was like, I guess I didn't see it coming, and I have still been very back and forth on the idea since you brought it up a couple weeks ago. But I'm curious for you, what made you start thinking about whether or not free will exists, or if the world is based around something more along the lines of fate?
Yeah, every time that I go down this rabbit hole, I spiral a bit.
Yeah, fair. It's very spiralable.
Yes,
rabbit
very
hole, if that's a word.
Um, I'm not sure when that started for me, but it's still ongoing.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Still a work in progress. I don't see an end to that one, by the
Yeah,
way.
I was definitely no into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just read something, maybe some philosopher or something along those lines. But yeah, it's a mind bending concept because there's no way to prove that you have free will.
Right.
And you go up to a stranger at Walmart and you ask them, if you think that do you think you have free will? And most of them are going to say, yeah, of course. And they'll touch their nose and say, I just use my free will to touch my nose. And then it goes to, what if that was the script? What if that was destined to happen? What if you're meant to touch your nose?
I'm supposed to be here asking you about this, and you were supposed to touch your nose.
Yeah. There's just no way to prove that you actually have free will, or if it might be an illusion, and that we're sort of living out the script, where a lot of people like to use the word simulation.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, man.
So as you've explored that idea, what have been the things? Has there been anything that's been comforting about either side of that equation, or anything that's been particularly like thought inspiring on either side of that?
Yeah, I think that it is comforting to think about this idea, because it is a possibility that we actually don't have control over what's going on at all.
Right.
And so that sort of lets me relax in life when I lean into that side. I go back and forth with it. But when I'm more nihilistic and maybe going through a depressive period, it sort of makes me relax a bit, knowing like this is just the way that things are meant to be. And yeah, I can sort of just lean into that. But man, it's definitely a kind of it can be a dark thing to think about sometimes, because
right.
You can feel quite purposeless in life if you really lean that way of like, man, nothing matters here. What am I even doing here?
Right. Do you think that being in a position where you have found something that you're passionate about, and maybe something that you feel intrinsically called towards, do you think that helps with the predicament of whether or not free will exists, or whether or not we're on a path that we don't have much control over?
I think like with tattooing, it almost felt like it found me. When I reflect on that period where I found the thing that I feel I'm meant to be doing, which is tattooing, I almost feel like I have little to nothing to do with it.
Right.
As much as I could say I attracted this and this was something that I made happen.
Right.
I can also say that it truly felt like this thing kind of just fell in my lap. So maybe that's why, for me, this is so heavy on my mind, of like the whole idea of fate and destiny, is because of the number one thing in my life sort of feels like it just fell in my lap,
Right.
Where are you at with that these days? Because I know last time you were thinking about smashing a glass on the floor to prove that you have free will.
Dude, I had this exact same conversation and used that exact same example 2 nights ago. I was there were these little like shot glass looking things, and I was having dinner with a friend, and I was like having this same conversation. I was like, we were actually talking about how excited I was to do this podcast today, and how I was excited to jump into this topic with you. And I use that same example of like, free will ideally exists, but like, would you spike this glass on the floor right now? It's like, well, you could. Okay, well, go ahead. Right? Like it's just such an easy example because it's such an outrageous thing to do. But I think for me, where I have maybe not settled with it, but one of the things that I find to be the most aligned with where I'm at right now is that we have some degree of free will, that maybe it's a spectrum instead of like a binary black and white sort of thing. And that our free will exists in the actions that we take, but not the results that come from them. And that, we have the free will to take a glass and shatter it in a restaurant, but we don't have control over all of the karma and like the ripple that goes out from that. Like we don't have the control over how the people in the restaurant react, or if somebody who, maybe you want to do business with down the line remembers that moment and then you don't get to because you did something outlandish a year prior in a restaurant, all of those things. So in that way, I guess I think that we have the ability to drop the pebble in the pond, but we don't have the ability to figure out or decide what happens afterwards, like where the waves go or how many fish disperse and how many fish get eaten because that one fish ran away from the pebble versus going about its business or whatever. So what's interesting about that though is it's very it can be a bit of a narcissistic or like individualistic view of the world, where it's like there's only one pebble and the rest of the world is the pond that decides to respond back to what you did, because everybody else simultaneously is also dropping their own pebbles into the pond. And there's that weird karmic energy where the karma that you're creating right now, I'm also creating my own versions of karma and all of the things that are going to happen in the universe from what we do today and everything that we do after today. And so I think the easiest place for me to land with it is that I like the idea of having free will, because to me that is it's very freeing and comforting to think that I have some level of agency over what I want to do, as opposed to being on a specific track. But I also think that it's a very intimidating, or a very maybe intimidating is the right word, thought to think that you have to be in control of everything, that like that everything is free will and that the only way that anything happens in the world is if you do it. I think that that's very limiting and very intimidating, to think that everything is in your hands, as opposed to fate where nothing is in your hands. Like I think that I think the most comforting view for me is that maybe there's somewhere in the middle with that.
Right. Do you struggle with wanting to control too much of your life, and sort of wrestling with that idea? Because for me, like, I'm in a stage in my life where I'm really trying to let go of a lot and just let universe, let God work for me, and believing heavily in karma. I feel works in my favor. But yeah, I think it's human nature to want to control as much as we possibly can, but just realizing that no matter who you are, where you are, what you look like, we're all in the same boat. We don't really have much control here.
Right.
That's a hard thing to accept.
I agree. I'm curious what letting go, and I like that, like let go, let God, let go, let universe, like whatever your thing is. I'm curious what that looks like for you, and why you've felt like this phase of life is a time that you needed to lean into that, or maybe like what you're looking for in that process of letting go.
Yeah, what letting go looks like for me. Controlling everything that I believe that I can control, which is very little. It's for the most part just controlling how I react to things. Somebody smashes into my car, I can't control that. I just can control how I respond. And so focusing just on how I respond to life. Not saying I'm just, trying to lean back in life and let it all happen.
Right.
I think there is a balance of trying to make things happen. But I found in the past, when I try to do too much, when I try to control too much, you just lose your mind, because it's not going to go the way that you planned. It's not going to go the way that you want. And I just have a belief that things will work out in the end. I really try to just hold on to that.
Right. Do you think that that disposition and that belief that things will work out, as you zoom out, tend to lead to better results than the times that you try like white knuckling your way into a specific result that you're looking for?
Yeah, 1,000%, 1,000%. Because when we have less expectations of things, then we're not so disappointed when things go a certain way. It's like I didn't even really put much thought or time into thinking about what it may look like. And now that I'm here and this is what it looks like, I'm here to accept it.
Right.
It sort of simplifies the process.
I love the idea of attachment to the input and detachment from the outcome. Like the idea that if you fall in love, or if you fall like almost in with intention into the things that you have input on, like like I know that I love to go to the gym. I know that I love to spend time reading, that I love to spend time with certain people and spend my energy on certain ideas or certain conversations. Trusting that that input is aligned and that it's the thing that you're supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that whatever outcome on the back end happens, trusting that it'll be a good one because the intention was right in the input.
That's heavy, man. I was just listening to LeBron James on a podcast yesterday talking about this, how that's still how he approaches the game, is to just lean into the process. And he said it's still a major focus of his to detach from the results, meaning, or at least I took it this way. If he wins a championship, then he wins a championship. If he doesn't, he's all right.
Right.
It's not the end of the world. I think that's such a cool way to look at life.
Right. I was just having a conversation with Clay yesterday about something similar, and I think it ties in. But we were talking about goal setting and like mountaintop moments where you got the thing that you set out for. Like you worked with your dream client, or you hit a money goal, or you won a race, you did whatever. And I think that really is an attachment to an outcome, right? It's like everything will be good once I get this gold medal. Everything will be good once I make this much money per year. Everything will be good when, fill in your tangible goal that you have. But that to me is so attached to the outcome as opposed to attaching to the inputs and the journey that it takes to get there. And I'm curious for you, how goal setting and how some of the ways that you plan for the future interacts with your idea of falling in love with the things that you can control.
First of all, why do we all do that? We all think that we're gonna feel right when
Right.
this thing happens.
As soon as everything will be okay.
Yeah, it's nuts. And I continue to do it. Like, I'll catch myself all the time. I'll be all right when that thing happens.
Right.
It's a very strange thing that we all do. And I forgot your question.
The question was, how does the tendency to lean into goal setting, or to plan for the future, how does that interact with your tendency, or your appreciation that you have for just focusing on the things that you can control?
I try not to get too ahead of myself. Like, there's I feel like there's kind of two types of people. Very, very organized, and like my sister, for example, she's very calculated with planning her future, and she's got a 5-year plan. She thinks about her retirement, what that looks like for her, and I admire that because she has got things in order, but I just can't live that way. I don't understand it. My life feels so fragile as it is, that I have to break it down into a much shorter time frame.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, what my life looks like in a year. She knows exactly what her life looks like in a year, or at least has that idea in her head.
Right.
Like we just talked about, it's probably not going to end up exactly the way she plans, but
Right.
I still respect that about people, because at a certain point there is responsibility that she has that I don't have.
Right.
But I feel like that's a more fulfilling way to live for me, and my personality type is to just slow it down and try to just be here today, and stick to your quote that you love so much. Be where your feet are. I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite quote.
Yeah, me too, man. Is that something that you've always leaned towards, is being somebody who's able to go with the flow or have trust in things turning out how they're supposed to? Or were there things that happened where you began to give up some of that control or some of that illusion of control?
Yeah, I think it's been a process of trying to unlearn that habit of constantly trying to control everything in my life. And it's been quite easy lately, honestly, because I am really leaning into the idea of not having much control, because so many things have happened in my recent life where I proved to have no control over the situation, as everybody. It's not like this is a unique experience. Yeah, for me, it really simplifies life so much to not be constantly planning this and that, and even getting my hopes up. That's a big one. I don't really get my hopes up for much anymore. So just not even having that expectations for how I think things will or should go. It makes it that much sweeter when things go right, because I was prepared for shit to hit the fan.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Does having that outlook, and does it help you be more present, and does it help you enjoy things more in the short term or in the day to day, when you're not as wrapped up in future outcomes or in like the goals that you're setting out to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're thinking about tomorrow all the time, you're not living today. You're already blasted off into tomorrow, and we're all so guilty of that. It's a very human thing, but for me, I think my life looks best when I'm thinking minimally, not overcomplicating situations. And yeah, where are you with that these days? Because I know you're a very calculated person. You don't just let life kind of take you to the wind. You have a lot of plans and goals, but at the same time, like that, your quote is "be where your feet are." So how do you manage that that sort of, or strike that balance these days?
Just like you said about the free will thing earlier, it's very much a work in progress. It's so funny, we joke, but it is kind of the truth that like we put that "be where your feet are" idea on as many things as possible, because I need to see it as many times as I can. So, the more hats, the more T-shirts, the more stickers that we put this idea of "be where your feet are" on. It really is like it's the reminder that I love the most, but it's also the one that I need to hear the most a lot of times. And so, much like what you said about tattooing, I think that I had a very similar moment with podcasting in the last 6 months or so, where I realized that this is really what I want to do. Like, I want this to be my career, my professional sport, my obsession, all of the things. And really what it's come down to is it gets really hard when you think about, okay, well, how many subscribers do I need? How big does the show need to be? How many, which big name guests do I need to have? What are all of these things? That really is a lot to think about, because it seems like such a long road, and it's also one that's very, very much out of my control, and it's non-linear. It's not one of those things where there's there's a very laid out track, like something like med school, where you kind of know each of the steps that you're going to take, and then eventually you'll have this outcome. And so really what I've been focusing on the most is having an unwavering dedication and essentially a non-negotiable reflex of saying yes to things that are aligned with that goal. And so, you know, we were talking a little bit about like the lighting and all the stuff that we brought up for the podcast today. And you're like, yeah, I thought you guys were just going to like pop in with a couple lights is going to be a small thing. And, you know, one of the things that I've really been leaning into is like, what would the person who has the podcast that I want, how would they go about this situation? They would for sure invest in the equipment. They would take the time to travel to go take advantage of opportunities to have guests on. They would do research and prepare before every guest. Like there are some things that are very obvious that just need to be done. Like you needed the tattoo equipment that you bought when you were starting your career. And the way that I've been trying to focus on being less of a planner is by diving more and more into just the things that I can control.
Grabbing paper towels.
We are live in a tattoo here, folks. We have things we need to worry about. But yeah, that's kind of been it for me, dude. It's just like, it's the goals that I have now are so big that they're intimidating at times. And so I'm trying to focus more again on the input instead of the outcome. And it's been very reassuring because I know that I can control preparing for the podcast today, and I can control ignoring the tattoo gun blasting me right now and all those things. But you know, I know how much value that I get from our conversations. I have no idea if 10 people or 1,000 people are going to listen to this, but not being attached to that and just being attached to like being as present as I can in this situation and in this conversation. That's been one of the things that's been the most helpful, is just like trying to draw it back as much as I can into the day to day.
Yeah. Detach.
Yeah.
Detachment. I love that.
Yeah. Detach from the outcome.
I'm sure like being full of that desire that you have to be the top podcaster, you need to study the current top podcasters, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you compare yourself to these people without losing that appreciation for your own experience? Because it is necessary to compare. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely think this is it's super cool because this is a question I had for you also with tattooing, but with podcasting, I actually think that that's the most natural thing for me in the whole process, is that comparison piece and the inspiration piece, because I fell in love with podcasting when I was super young. My dad really enjoyed listening to podcasts, and he got me onto a couple that they weren't particularly insightful. I was listening to like comedians podcasts before bed or something like that, but I've had a steady stream of like ingest of podcast material since I was probably 12.
Wow.
And at 26 now, like that's 14 years of not knowing I was studying for a test that I'm now being tested on. Yeah. And so I think I have the good fortune of the fact that I just am very naturally in love with conversation, and I have that curiosity that I tend to listen to podcasts anyways, so it doesn't necessarily feel like work. What I did notice, though, is I started to branch out and do the podcast. For those people who don't know, I started a podcast with my co-host Clay Welter last year, and we did 42 episodes of that. And what I noticed when we first started that was the way that I listened start to be different. And instead of listening purely for the value that I was trying to get out of the conversation and, you know, think about the ideas that they were talking about and just be a consumer, I started to listen for the ways that people would ask questions, or see if I could pick up tendencies of, you know, how does somebody get from, you know, they just went all the way down this road on this topic and they talked about everything. How did they then make that transition into a different topic that's still related, but it's on a totally different totally different wavelength from what they were just doing? Or how does somebody open a podcast where it immediately goes to a conversation that has value, but it doesn't make the guest uncomfortable, or it doesn't make, so
You
those,
study this stuff.
yeah, so those kinds of things, like I'm lucky in the fact that I'm kind of have this predisposition where I listen to podcasts all the time anyways, but the way that I listen to them starts to be, I start to try to pick up things more and more often about how people ask questions and how they can kind of direct a conversation, to give their guests the best platform possible to like show who they are and what their story is.
That's interesting because like when I listen to a podcast, that's the complete opposite of how I listen for the most part.
Yeah, tell me about that. I'm really curious.
I would say I'm more so listening to the podcast for the material, the information that's within,
Right.
not necessarily, and maybe I should, maybe I could change the way I listen a little bit to become a better conversationalist.
Okay.
But I'm not studying the way people ask questions. I'm not listening for when's the right cue to transition to this and that, like you are.
Yeah.
It's more so like how can I listen to Andrew Huberman talk about brain chemistry and learn what he sent, like,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's really funny because I played college football, and one of the things that I would catch myself doing when I was watching film sometimes, if I was like zoning out, is I'd start watching. I was supposed to be watching the defense when we were like studying an opponent, and then if I was getting lazy or if I was kind of like zoning out, I'd start watching the ball, and I'd start just being entertained by it instead of being like educating myself.
Yeah.
And so that is, when I start listening to a podcast, there are times where I just listen to it strictly for that entertainment or to get the material that you're talking about. But there are, it definitely adds another layer to it when you're trying to think about like the questioning patterns and some different things like that. But really the biggest question that led me down all these different rabbit holes, and it's still the one that I go into when I'm trying to like model somebody, is what makes this conversation a good conversation. And I think that piece of curiosity, like you and I have had fantastic conversations before. You've got other people you're close to, and you just tend to have great conversations. No. I think that we take that for granted, or we just take it as a given that it's like, oh yeah, I just have good conversations with this person. But what makes those conversations inherently different than the ones that you have with somebody else? And I think that when you start to listen to people talk that way, it's you start to pick up patterns about like, well, how much time do they spend talking versus asking, or how do they listen, or how do they ask follow-up questions? And I think that if more people had more awareness of that, it would help them connect with people that they care about a lot better, because they would notice little annoying things about themselves, or places that they're leaving some meat on the bone where they could actually become a lot closer with the people that they're talking to.
Yeah. What's a piece of advice you have for somebody who's looking to become a better conversationalist?
The shorter the question, the longer the answer is my favorite one. And so I find myself being guilty of this sometimes. I'm really glad when I catch myself doing it because I can stop. But one of the things that I used to do all the time was I would ask somebody a question, and I would start to answer it while I was asking it. I would have a specific answer that I thought that they were going to give me. Yeah. And so I would start to almost answer my own question as I was asking it. So if I was asking you about tattooing, for example, if I were saying something like, how do you draw inspiration from somebody without copying them? That by itself is just an open-ended question that gives you a platform that you could talk about it. What I used to do, and I think where people can sometimes get down the wrong road with asking questions of people, is they'll start to answer it for that person. They'll say, how do you draw inspiration from people without copying them? Because I noticed that for me, I do blah, 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 blah. And I can imagine that it's hard to blah, 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 blah. So what do you think? And a lot of times you'll get an answer like, yeah, no, that's kind of what I think.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. So I think ask short questions and leave them open-ended is a really good way to have somebody think about what they're going to say, and you're not putting up any guardrails for the answer that they can give you.
Mm, I like that. And you're giving them avenues to go down,
Right.
rather than sort of making it more linear by sort of doing too much with the question.
Yeah. Which I find to be more exciting too. I think it's when I ask short, open-ended questions, a lot of times the conversation ends up going in directions that I don't expect it to.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about talking with people is when you end up exploring ideas or thoughts or something like that that you've never considered before. And it seems like that's a really good way to do that. Have you noticed about yourself, though? Because, I mean, you've probably had more cumulative hours of conversation than most people I know. But have you noticed in
Still
your
the worst.
lots of the things in our lives are work in progress. Have you noticed any communication patterns about yourself or anything, any predictable ways that you can have good conversations or connect with people?
I think lately I've been really trying to let whoever I'm talking with know that I'm not going to judge them. And when people feel that, they're willing to share a whole lot more and be more vulnerable and get more intimate and detailed with the conversation, versus if you give off a sort of a stern, I don't know, intimidating vibe, then people are scared
Right.
To share something that you might be able to judge them for. So I really try to let my guard down first, in hopes that I can make someone else comfortable enough to let their guard down. And I think that's when the best conversations happen, is when both people know that they can say whatever and they're not going to be judged for it.
Right. How do you make people, maybe not make people, but how do you leave that door open for people to truly feel like they're not going to be judged and that it is a safe place to have a meaningful conversation, without it just sounding like you're blowing smoke?
My method, and maybe you got a method or two that I could take from you, but my main method is to just say something that they could judge the shit out of.
Ooh, so you go first.
You go first. I go first, and then sometimes, I would say most of the time, it works, and I can tell that person feels more comfortable just from hearing me tell them something embarrassing about myself, or sort of making fun of myself a little bit, like things like that, and then they're willing to also join in and do the same thing.
Right.
But conversation doesn't. It's really hard, like with a stranger, to just jump right into that stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not willing to. It's not like I'm a therapist over here. I get uncomfortable quite quickly with conversating with strangers. But back to I would rather just say fuck it and let's start talking about real shit, rather
Right.
than, like, if we're gonna be here, let's be here. Who cares,
Is that humility and that willingness to go first? What does it take to have to be able to do that?
I think it takes the willingness to be judged, like the willingness to, like I'm okay if you walk out of here and you think I'm weird. Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I would rather risk that than not try at all and have a silent room or a boring conversation, if that makes sense.
Do you think that it's only possible to have meaningful connections and meaningful, I guess, relationships if both people are willing to embarrass themselves, or if they're willing to maybe not walk away from a conversation feeling like they're cool or like they're untouchable?
Man, I think so. Like, uh, that's when real conversation happens, right? Or at least, in my opinion, is when two people really let their guard down and uh, say what's actually going on with them, which is most of the time uh, something that could be judged
Right.
or I don't know, laughed at or confused. And the list goes on and on. Uh, where are you at with that? Like, do you fear being judged by people, or are you also okay with somebody thinking whatever they want about you?
Yeah. That's that's something that I've had a big I don't know, almost like a come to Jesus, not a come to Jesus moment, but like a come to Jesus period with lately. And it actually started when you asked me a question a couple months ago, and you said, does it ever make you uncomfortable knowing how much of yourself is on the internet of you just talking about stuff? And you said, or you asked me, you said, do you ever censor yourself while you're on the podcast to prevent people from knowing certain things that you think or certain things about you? And it was one of those moments where, like, I think that the only reason that the answer came was because the question was asked, not because I had thought about the answer previously. And I remember in that moment, it just kind of like the answer fell out of me, even though I didn't know that it was in there. But the answer was that I would rather put everything, I'd rather put myself out there and be exactly who I am and say everything that's on my heart and everything that I believe in, and have somebody, like you said, think I'm a weirdo.
Yeah.
Um, but think I'm a weirdo because they actually have an accurate representation of who I am. Like if somebody thinks I'm crazy, if somebody loves me, if somebody, whatever emotion that they attach to, I want them to be attached to that because they have an accurate representation of who I am. And I think that that's one of the things that so many celebrities or people in the public eye fall into, is that, especially in the age of social media, they get famous, or they start to grow a following because of a character that they're playing. And sometimes they're playing a character of themselves. Like they pick a certain aspect about themselves and really play that up, or whatever that is. And I think that it's a really big trap, because if that's what you're putting out, then that's eventually, if everything goes exactly how you're planning, then that's the person that you have to be now. And that to me seems like it seems like you're very quickly paving a highway to like your own personal hell, where like you're gonna get there really fast because you built a highway and you can go fast on it, but the destination that it goes is not somewhere that you actually want to be. And so for me, I would rather be exactly who I am, and if that's something that the world needs, or if that's something that people connect to, then that's great. But I don't want to gain traction or become known for something that I'm not, because then you become trapped in that box. And that to me seems like a personal prison a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And eventually that character, that your true character, is gonna be unveiled.
Correct.
And then what?
Right. And I think that that's got to be one of the most difficult things, is feeling like you can't, feeling like it's a danger, or feeling like it's a screw up to show your true self. Being in a position where that is threatening to your career or to your social circle or something like that, to truly be yourself, that seems lonely. That seems like another way to be alone in a room full of people, because all of the people who are there for the character. They're not there for you,
Yeah. That's something I struggle with, is with the internet, is just being myself in entirety on the internet.
Right.
Because I am a very private person, and so it almost doesn't feel right to be myself on the internet, because I'm a private person. But then sometimes I get this complex of like, am I being fake on the internet because I'm not being myself truly?
Right.
Um, So yeah, it's kind of it's a tough balance to strike of how much do I show of myself.
Right.
Um,
How do you balance being in a position where the work that you do is really like it is your product, it's your passion, it's so many different things. But you have to do something, like you have to be on social media and you have to put your work out there
mhm.
in a way that people can find it. But I'm curious how you strike that balance of doing the thing that you actually are passionate about, but having to lean into something that doesn't necessarily always feel natural, like posting on social media or sharing your work in a way that isn't necessarily natural all the time.
Yeah, I think when business and your passion overlap, like when you start to be able to make money off of the thing that you're passionate about, like problems just arise. And one of the problems for me is the marketing thing, the promotion thing. It feels wrong. It feels kind of strange sometimes because I believe in what I'm doing, but at the same time, I don't want to shove that in people's faces.
Right.
Like, hey, buy my product. It feels a little um,
Just feel like inauthentic
forcing,
maybe.
yeah. But realizing that I've already accepted that you have to do it,
Right.
and so I've been trying to train myself for the last couple of years to uh, be more open to just sharing more bits and pieces of myself
Yeah.
to try to rid that out of my brain because ultimately it'll play to my benefit if if I show more of myself. That's why I've had like you've taken fantastic photos of me over the last couple years, and even that is like kind of uncomfortable for me. Like,
Right.
um, am I too private for this?
Right.
It's not that I
Yeah.
think I'm too cool by any means. No, like I just the internet's kind of is a scary thing.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting thinking about that one of the most authentic things that you do is your art, but the way that it grows is by doing one of the most inauthentic things to you, which is sharing it online. And it's like when that feels like a necessary evil, I'm curious how you navigate that, and how you've been able to get to a point where you're able to lean into it or able to continuously share more, because you have. I mean, you've built um, a great following. You've had the opportunity to work with some really high profile people, and I think that sharing that work has had its benefits. But I'm curious which pieces for you allow you to like continue to lean into that and find a way to be authentic about sharing things.
I think the Instagram and the TikTok when it comes to really everybody is social media in general is just a highlight reel.
Right.
So everything on my Instagram is it's a tenth of what I've made as far as tattoos. I only post maybe 10% of the tattoos that I've done. Um, so by no means is it an accurate representation of my career so far.
Yeah.
At the same time, I could argue it is because it basically everything on my Instagram is when I have been given the ability to uh, create the way that I want to create. Um, so yeah, for me, I try to be authentic by on social media by just showing the tattoos that speak to me the most, the tattoos that I enjoyed the most, um, in hopes that eventually I can develop a a following and a support system of people who understand where I want to go with it.
Right. Yeah. It's like showcase the work that you want to be hired for.
Yes, exactly, exactly. What about you? How much work do you do that you don't promote, and why do you not promote that work?
Um, I'm gonna skip answering that from like from like the media business perspective, you know. Um, but for the podcast, I would say that I share what I love about it is that it seems like a very all or nothing sort of thing. Like we don't typically edit anything about the podcast outside of throwing a like the logo at the beginning and fading out the logo at the end. So it is about as raw as that conversation can get. And what I love about that is that there's nothing, there's nowhere you can hide. There's nothing to hide from.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of the work is done in the beginning, where I will only choose a person to talk to that is like or fits a profile or has qualities about the kinds of people that I want to talk to in the future. So like having somebody who's thoughtful and passionate about their craft and their art like you, I would love to talk to other tattoo artists. I would love to talk to painters who have made the jump to being full-time, or musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, instead of choosing what to share, it almost comes down to that to me feels like you're making the decision on the back end, whereas for me it's more of making the decision on the front end of, do I believe that this person has the kind of value that or the kind of traits that I value in a person, and do I think that they have a message or a perspective or something that other people could also benefit from. And then just trusting that when that conversation happens, that it will be something that will make people's lives better somehow. And so I think it's almost like the reverse thing, where I have to decide on the front end, like before the thing happens, whereas you do the entire project and do the whole thing and then decide if you want to share it on the back end.
Right, with hope attached.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the thing that's tricky for both scenarios though is like, yes, there's hope attached for you that you'll be able to get clients that also enjoy the work that you're doing, but there's hope for me that I was right, that I made the right decision, that this person is going to share something of value, that this conversation is potentially going to be able to impact somebody. And I think that goes back to the trust thing that we were talking about earlier, that, you know, trusting your intuition and trusting that, you know, I got value from this conversation, or I was creatively inspired by this piece. And so now it's up to the universe to bring more people like that to me who are interested in these things.
Right. Where's your willingness to fail? Where do you stand with that these days?
Oof. Just in general?
Just in general, yeah.
My willingness to fail is high. My willingness to quit is almost zero. Yeah. Like failure, true failure to me is stopping, is giving up. But I think that there are failures that'll happen along the way that can become a really beautiful part of a story. But I don't necessarily believe in, or I'm not comfortable with the idea of like full on just everything at zero failure for myself. Because I think that the only way that happens is if you give up or you just stop pursuing the thing.
Right.
Like I don't think the failure is possible until you quit. But I want to ask you about that, but I'm really curious. Before we started spinning the yarn on the last thing, I was curious for you when you were bringing up social media and the fact that everything is a highlight reel. And
snitching on myself right now.
Well, dude, I mean, it's true for everybody. It's just it's just being honest about it. But I'm curious. One of the things that we've talked about before is inspiration, and I'm curious for you, knowing that most other artists also are probably sharing their highlight reel on Instagram or on social media. How do you compare yourself to other people through social media, and how do you draw inspiration from that? You know, you're asking me about that with podcasters earlier, and I'm curious how you draw inspiration as an artist, and in your career from people who are sharing their versions of their highlight reels on social media as well.
Yeah, as much as I sort of dog the internet and technology
right.
often, that's quite hypocritical of me, because without the internet and without the technology that's in my hand right now, I'm not able to do what I do.
Always go to tap tattooing. You might lose me, but somebody will do it.
But yeah, like for example, I'm able to go onto Instagram and study the best artists in the world and take little bits and pieces from them, and learn from them just by studying their work. Like even 20 years ago, you weren't able to do that.
Right.
Maybe you could get your hand on a magazine that's a year old and has a selective artists, but like with the evolution of social media, it makes it so easy to you can see what everybody's up to right now. Like, so I try to use that to my advantage when it comes to my work and try to study up as much as I can. Instagram being like the main one, which sounds ridiculous, but most artists I think would agree. Like that's where people have their portfolio.
Right.
It's Instagram. Yeah, people got a website, but you go to the Instagram. That's the site. Yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier about where's that line of sort of biting.
Right.
See a lot.
Biting for all of our old white audience means that you are stealing somebody else's work and making it your own.
There you go. There you go. You see a lot of tattoo artists that just will go. They'll get an approach from a client, and the client wants a butterfly, and they'll go straight to Pinterest and look up butterfly tattoo, and they'll copy and paste that butterfly tattoo onto you. That's not okay. That's stealing. And the reason people do it is because it's the easiest route. It takes no effort. You don't even have to go on Google and find your own butterfly reference, which also takes very little time. Yeah, and I think a lot of tattoo consumers don't really understand that it's not okay and that it's strange. I don't know why, but I think it would be cool to see more tattoo artists educate clientele on this concept, and that hey, we can make our own thing here, and it could be as cool as that or cooler,
right?
If we just sort of take our time and sort of customize it to you. You know,
How does that manifest in your work?
how does what manifest?
The intentionality behind being original and not being willing to bite off of other people's work and do that copy paste.
I really try to take my time and be quite selective with what I work on. Let's say somebody approaches me to get a skull tattoo. I'll go on to Instagram or Pinterest and see how other artists have done this, and then that gives me sort of an idea of where I could go. How can I make this different? How can I do something that is unique and give this customer something that nobody else has? And that's sometimes it's really hard to achieve. Let's say someone wants a lion. You can't get that creative when it comes to a realistic lion. There's rules and there's boundaries of things you can and can't do before it starts to not look like a lion,
right?
Or other
Yeah.
other problems pose themselves. So it's easier said than done, but for me, the main thing is just being selective and not taking on work that doesn't inspire me. And if I have that excitement that I usually do, like the piece we're working on right now, is unique. It's your idea, and you gave me free reign to customize the design and the composition, and nobody's gonna have this. That's the ideal tattoo experience for me.
How does I'm very interested in creativity by itself and preserving that passion that you were talking about earlier when it becomes your work. How does making sure that you can be original and taking somebody's idea and turning it into something that you find creative inspiration in, how does that help you preserve your passion, or string together these months and months and months at a time where you're doing 6 sessions a week and really tapping into your creativity as often as you do?
Not to repeat myself again, but just the selectiveness is the number one thing. If I'm taking on something that is unaligned with my creative approach or even personal beliefs, which is another kind of controversial topic that we can get into, is that overlap. But that's another thing that I'm fortunate to be able to do, is to turn people down and to just take on what I want to take on. I'm very, very lucky that I'm able to do that and not be in a position where I'm sort of forced because I need the money, or I need the clientele, and now all of a sudden I'm doing a portrait of Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Like a lot of artists kind of end up in that situation where they end up doing things for money.
How does that destroy your passion or your creative inspiration when you're doing something that's misaligned?
A lot of tattoo artists will say that it is your job as a tattoo artist to execute the client's idea. And for me, I feel like I'm the direct representation of the tattoos that I produce. So I'm not going to tattoo a portrait of people have crazy approaches sometimes, like wanting El Chapo and like Pablo Escobar and all sorts of insane requests, like pornography tattoos. Like people want some crazy shit, and I think that I attach myself so much to my work, and some people they don't. They are totally able to separate themselves from the work.
Right.
I feel like I am the work, and so I'm much more picky than a lot of tattoo artists are because of that.
Right. Was there a point that you made that shift from saying yes to any client or saying yes to people for the money or for the experience, to being able to say no?
Yeah, I think we have a similar experience with this in our respective fields of when you first start something, you kind of have to take on everything to, one, financially support yourself, and two, get better at the craft, right? So once I wasn't dead broke anymore,
Yeah.
I was able to make
Praise
that
God,
shift.
baby.
I was able to make that shift and start saying no more. Would you agree? That's kind of what happened with you now.
Yeah, I feel like the it's so funny because we were talking a little bit about like criteria for people and inner circles and stuff like that earlier, and there's definitely criteria for clients and for business. It just happens to be that at the beginning, the only criteria tends to be like, do you have a checkbook and is there money in that account?
Right.
If those two things are a yes, then we are doing this project. But yeah, for me, I got burned a couple times really bad, where I didn't get paid large sums of money.
We can go ahead and blast these people.
Yeah, no, I'm good to go. They know who they are. Yeah, so I got burned a couple times, or I would deal with people who, just became very high maintenance, and they made like the quality of my actual life just go substantially down just by, agreeing to work with them. And so, yeah, I think that there comes a point where your basic needs are met by the thing that you're doing. And at that point, the game becomes figuring out how you can preserve yourself so that you can serve more people who you actually care about. Because I think what I found for myself, especially when I was doing a lot of photography and videography and building the media business, was that I had to be the business's like main lifeline for a long time. Like I would bring all of the clients in, I would serve most of the clients, or I had to make sure that I was there for the team and all of this different stuff. And if I was super tapped out, then it would negatively impact everybody. So once I realized that I had to start protecting myself as an asset, just like I would protect anything else inside of the business. So saying no became just as important, later in the business as saying yes was at the beginning. And that's when I made that realization, I got a batch of t-shirts made that said cool projects, cool people on the back. And it seemed like a very like aspirational kind of fun little hip thing or whatever to have on a t-shirt. But the real idea behind that was we will only say yes to working with somebody if we believe in their mission. So they're working on a cool project, and we will only say yes to them if they're a cool person. Like they're a person that we want to see succeed and a person whose story we want to be a part of as they're growing. And that filter alone has helped me say no to a lot of different things. And, money wise, maybe we would have made more, maybe we wouldn't have, but it's made the quality of life substantially better since we adopted that.
Right. And you would rather put less money in your pockets than work with somebody who is so far removed from your beliefs and morality. Right?
Yeah.
You'd rather make less money. I love that, like that idea. I'd rather make less than to work with somebody who I don't like.
Right. My friend Drew McManus said it beautifully. He said, if it costs you your peace, you can't afford it. And that is one of my favorite quotes of all time, because it's, he was even relating it to the fact that there are some people who are wealthy beyond their means, but their mental health, their life, so many things are just like they cannot afford their own success because all of the things that they have to deal with and worry about and all these things, like it destroys them. So they literally can't afford the level of wealth that they have. And I think that it really resonates with me, because it goes back to the people too. Like, regardless of how much somebody's willing to pay you for whatever, if that project or that engagement costs you your peace, it doesn't matter how much money they have. Like it's not a good exchange for you.
You ever feel temptation? Keep running away from the mic. Do you ever feel temptation to take on maybe a client or project, or think about going down a certain lane because you can come up?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a lot easier to theorize about when somebody's not waving a couple grand in front of your face or something like that. Or, at some point, maybe a lot more than that. But, yeah, I think it definitely is. I'm curious for you though. Like I don't get a ton of opportunity to really tap into, creativity the way that I want to a lot of times, especially being in a position where I'm building a business now, like where I used to have to be creative. Now, the way that things have grown, my mission is to build a business where creative people can thrive. So instead of me creating, like that energy has to be put into creating an ecosystem where creative people really enjoy what they do every day when they go to work.
Right.
And so, I'm very curious for you. We were talking earlier about biting and about being original and all of that stuff. And as we were talking about that, I got really curious about whether or not you think that creativity is an exhaustible resource, and that if you mismanage it, that it can start to betray you, or it can start to not show up the way that you need it to?
I think 100% creativity is exhaustible. There's times where I have creativity and I mismanage it to where I'm spending my creative energy thinking about distractions or things that don't serve me when I could be putting that creative energy into my art. So I think we all need to be aware, right, of like when we are mismanaging that energy. And at least for me, like I really try to correct myself when I do, because it's kind of a slippery slope when it comes to, for me, like distraction. If I spend my creative energy thinking about how I can I guess I'm sort of censoring myself. That's why I'm freezing right now. Yeah, let's come back to that one.
Okay. Yeah. Where I find the reason that I've got that question is because there's a book that I read called the War of Art. Have you read that one from Stephen Pressfield?
Right.
I think we talked about it before.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated with his idea of resistance. And the idea behind the book is essentially that there's this thing called resistance that shows up when you're on the path that you're supposed to be on, and when you sit down to create whatever your thing is that you're creating, whether it's art, tattoos, writing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that essentially you need to be in service to your art and to battle this ongoing fight with resistance. And what I love about how he talks about creativity and the creative process is it's almost a very routine and a very disciplined approach towards creativity, where you honor it, and you honor it by showing up and dedicating yourself fully to, if you're writing, then maybe you sit down at your writing desk at the same time every day, or you structure your day around the time that you're the most creative. So, for you, I know that you don't typically like starting to tattoo until it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, because the mornings are a slower time for you and you like designing in the evenings.
Right.
And what I love about that is it's so much of that is a discipline. And I think that it inherently honors your creative inspiration and your creative resource that you have by saying, like, I know that this is something that's special, and so I'm going to do it justice by taking all the actions that help me, like, really tap into that creative thing.
Yeah.
And what I love about seeing you work is it seems like you have a lot of non-negotiables around, like, I'm not going to hang out with friends or do this and that if I've got this design that I need to work on, or I'm not going to say yes to an early morning session with the client because that's not when I'm working my best yet, and all of those kinds of things. And I think a lot of the questions that I have around creativity for you are around the fact that it seems like you really do yourself and do your creative energy justice by the way that you structure your life.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think that I have so much respect for this art form. And right now, I don't spend much time and energy outside of tattooing. Creating, I'm not painting much these days. I'm not drawing pen to paper much these days, because I have so much respect for this craft, and I want to give everything that I can to it,
Right.
and be the best that I possibly can. In order to get where I need to go, there's, like you said, non-negotiables, just things that I need to do every single day. And I'm in pretty deep with it right now, to the point where it's like there is no like, maybe I take a couple weeks off and recharge. Like, no, this is what I do, and I have to do it, you know?
Right.
It also probably helps that I go nuts when I don't do it.
Right.
Maybe if I was just cool and was able to kind of, I don't know, go on vacation and be happy without it, it'd be a different story. And I'm sure much harder to stay on track. But I get so much fulfillment from my day-to-day tattooing that I'm at a pretty good place with the discipline.
That was one of the things that I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about, because dude, it's so hard for me not to stare at your paintings when we're in the studio, because I absolutely love your style. I know that they're not all your favorite pieces of work, but
fake painter.
But I'm curious what kind of role having creative pursuits outside of your pursuit that's become your job has played for you, and if that's an important part of your creative process at different points.
Well, I like that question. I've never been asked that before. Yeah, I think it's very important to have creative pursuits outside of the main one, because it breaks up the monotony, I guess, of the day to day. If I'm only focused on tattooing all of the time, it starts to become a bit toxic, and it's easy to burn out and to get sick of the process. But if I found like spending time within clothes and worded that weird,
fashion.
spend time in clothes.
Spend time in wearing
clothes.
clothes.
That's
is
a good
super
one.
cool.
That's a good one. Yeah, just caring about other things, you know, and I'm able to take my mind off of tattooing is, I think, like so important for me, because it just takes me away from the thing that I'm obsessed with, which I'm still never not obsessed with this, but just having that hour every day where I'm doing something else, and like I care about something else, and I'm able to kind of blast off a bit, not think about it, makes me sort of refreshes me a bit when I come back to it.
Does it ever feel like exercising your creativity in other things that you are passionate about, like fashion or like painting or like anything like that? Have you seen any benefits in your tattoo career, whether it's skills that you pick up or ways that you see the world or anything like that? Have you seen any direct benefits when it comes to your main thing with tattooing?
I think so. I think exposing myself to as much as I can, as far as things that are interesting to me, or I find value in, sort of intertwines itself with my creativity and ideas. And I remember I went to Edinburgh, Scotland, around this time last year, and I there's so many ancient graveyards there, and I came back and I was doing nothing but the darkest tattoos for months. And I think that was just because of that. Random, but yeah. Go to Scotland and look at the graveyards. It'll blow your mind.
Do you think that kind of fire, right? So when you come back from Scotland, you do a lot of really dark stuff, whether it's, you know, skulls, graveyards, that kind of stuff. Do you think that having that passion or that fire for a specific topic, do you think that can also help you level up your technical skills, like you become a better technical tattooer also?
Yeah, for sure. I think anytime that I pick up a tattoo machine, no matter what I'm tattooing, I'm able to get better, even if it's subconsciously just becoming more comfortable with the thing in my hand. It just happens. Like I really hope they can't hear that. Yeah, just the practice is always, it can't not pay off, because I'm here, I'm intentional with it. Yeah.
That's exciting, man.
Let's see.
All right, and we are back, everybody, from our slight break. We have new water and sparkling water. What was your gas station pickup?
A big Red Bull that is already consumed. The big one too, sugar free. Got to get the sugar free one.
Gum too.
Nicotine gum. Yes.
Perfect. It's a nootropic.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, we just got done talking and forgot where we left off. So for everybody who's listening, thank you for your patience. One of the things that I really wanted to get into when we were chatting, we first started talking about it right when we sat down, is talent versus skill, and the misconception that people have that they might be the same thing. But tell me about the difference that you see between talent and skill.
I think that the two are so frequently mixed up, and I'd be lying to say it doesn't bother me. Like when people oftentimes throw out the compliment, like, "Oh, you're very talented," and it's always meant in a like a lighthearted, complimentary way. But I think it bothers me because I identify much more with being skilled than talented. It's like I immediately want to pull up the first few tattoos that I did and show how horrible and pathetic they are. But
Spoken like a true artist.
Because everything that is, I guess, respectable that I do as far as the tattoos that I make, it's because of skill, not talent, and it's learned behavior versus the universe sort of blessing with a load of talent, and I think people think that people who are good at things were just always good at things. They just came out that way, when it's just not the case at all. And yeah, it's kind of strange how many times I see that happen, not just to myself, but seeing pro athletes or musicians like, oh man, you're a talent, when that person is putting work in and day out to develop the skills.
Do you think that's what gets you about it, is that it might underscore the dedication and the work that you've put into like honing in your craft?
Exactly. I think that's why it gets to me, because you almost want to point out that no, you're incorrect here. This is because I work really hard. So yeah, I almost never, I've never once felt that person saying you're talented meant it in a disrespectful way.
Right.
But I can't help it. I can't help but take it because it's simply not true.
I think it's funnily similar to I'm sure that a woman would be much more appreciative of being called beautiful or pretty or something like that than somebody would just rocking up and being like, hey, you're hot. Like the point is the same, like, and the person might have the same intention, but the delivery, it might mean two different things.
Right.
So, do you think that you inherently had any talent or a baseline of talent that allowed you to, or maybe that you could build upon?
I think that I'm naturally a little bit more artistically inclined than the average person, but not by much. It's just the work that I put in. It's gotten me to where I am now, where I have real skills. So maybe slightly, but not by much. I think it's just the work.
Right.
I'm sure you think about yourself in a similar light. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. My I think I've told this story on this podcast before, but my dad, I'm very grateful for how he ingrained hard work in me when I was young, and he had this very, very humbling thing that he kept on coming back to when it came to my sports career. I grew up loving football, knowing I wanted to play in college and all this different stuff. And he told me, he's like, dude, it is entirely possible and you can do this. But you are a average height, average athletic ability, white kid from Boise, Idaho. It's not like you're not going to be, you're not in Texas, you're not in Florida. We're not somewhere that's highly recruited. You're not, your genes aren't pointing to the fact that you're going to be 6'5" and jacked and all this different stuff. So what's going to separate you is that you're going to have to work harder to put yourself in a position that these other people with talent just, they're starting at a higher level than you are. So you have to work to get there. And whether or not that was true, most of it's true. 6'1" pretty average for football. And, I was rolling up to college at 190. So he pretty much hit the nail right on the head there. But I think I really appreciate the way that he went about that, because I think that it's very liberating thinking that you can get really good at something if you just put in the hard work, and that you don't have to be born special, or you don't have to be have some kind of inherent skill that you can't acquire. So I actually think that that skilled is a better compliment than talented as well, because it complements the work that you've done, and it like pays homage to the fact that you might not have started in a good place with this, but you are now.
More so a character nod.
Yeah,
versus,
exactly.
Oh, God fucked with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He dumped a lot of the tattooer juice into your mix. Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to honing in your craft and like the journey that you've had as a tattooer, I think that the skill set is very easy to see when you're looking at something like Instagram or portfolio, and you can kind of see that progression. But what are the things, whether it's in your life, in your perspective, what are the things have you noticed since the beginning of your tattoo career that you've really made a lot of progress on?
Since the beginning of my career?
Yeah.
People skills would be the number one for sure. Growing up, I was just the most shy, introverted, scared kid. Mm-hmm. Just scared of the world, scared of everything. And just throwing myself into the fire with my tattoo career, and just putting myself around people every single day, I just naturally became better at interacting. Still quite new to this,
right? Yeah,
quite new to this whole interacting thing,
right?
I think that's a cool outcome when you don't overthink something and you just throw yourself into it and things work out. That's one of the cooler things that's happened in my life.
Okay,
was the just naturally getting better at associating with people without even really trying.
Okay. It's like by nature of you getting good at tattooing, you also got good at...
Yeah, I don't know if I've gotten good yet, but I've made improvements for sure.
And it's almost like, it's like by proxy of you making improvements with that, you've made improvements in your social life as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
One of the things we were talking about off mic was, before we got started, was self-expression. And I'm curious for you, as you've really dedicated yourself to your passion and to your craft, I'm curious how that's played into your ability to express yourself, or your willingness to put yourself out there, because from the outside perspective, I love that you're willing to like rock whatever fashion you're feeling at the time. You've had 12 different haircuts since I've known you. Obviously, like, being heavily tattooed is a thing that's not super common societally, but it seems like self-expression is definitely one of the things that I would commend you on as being your friend, that it doesn't seem like it's like you hold back on it at all. But I'm curious what role that's played for you and how that's evolved over time.
Thank you for that. I think if I can make a point to somebody or a group without speaking, then that's my ideal way of communicating.
Well,
and so I would rather express myself through the outfit that I have on, through the tattoos on my body, uh, through my body language, if I'm able to do so, versus speaking. You know, everybody can speak, but
Right.
not everybody can convey a certain message without speaking.
What's the message that you're trying to get across?
That I'm going to show up as my authentic self no matter what environment that I'm in. So that's something that's, I don't want to say new to me, but I've really leaned into it more than ever as of the last couple years. I think having like a career that's not traditional by any means helps with that. I enjoy being different, I guess.
Okay. I think it's one of the commonalities between people that I find to be fascinating is that they show up as themselves regardless of what environment that they're in. And I've said this a lot of times, but it's also his birthday today, the guy that I'm about to mention. So happy birthday, Mr. Brady. But he's been an inspiration for me for years because I've seen him in rooms with talented musicians and in rooms where, you know, it's a bunch of fighters and all of this different stuff. And I've heard people who have done business with him say that he shows up the exact same in a boardroom as he does in the fight gym and when he's chilling in his apartment and all this different stuff. And he doesn't change who he is for anybody. And there's so many things that I've admired about different people, but I think that is the top of the list, is when people figure out who they are and like what drives them, and that there's nothing that can shake that. They'll wear you know, have all their tattoos out, wear a cutoff and shorts to a board meeting because they're going to go for a motorcycle ride afterwards. They've got different shit going on for the day, but the value that they bring is themselves. It's not, the value isn't, I chose to wear khakis and a golf polo to this so that I could look the part, right? It's like your value is so much bigger than you just molding to that situation. But I'm curious for you, why is that self-expression piece and why is showing up as 100% yourself something that you'd say that you want your overall message to be? Like, why does it resonate with you so much?
I guess it just feels very weird to me to not be myself. And like, I think we all growing up go through tough phases where, you know, we're sort of figuring out who we are, and we try this different haircut and nah, that's not me. That different outfit, nah, it's not me. But I think we all kind of eventually find out who we are. And for me, it's just, I feel it's an honor to myself to be that person. Some people just, they know who they are, but they can't be that person for whatever reason. Back to the boardroom thing. Like, it doesn't always play into your favor when you're showing up as your authentic self. I'd say the best businessmen in the world, they know how to adapt to their environment. They know how to say what certain people want to hear, therefore, like, betraying who they actually are.
Right.
And that works technically to your advantage. But you're not going to tell me that man is able to look himself in the mirror at night and be okay with the fact that he was a total fake person today. Right. I don't believe that.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, like, you're constructing a prison for yourself by doing that. By not being the person that you are. And I think that what's interesting about it too is, as you were saying that, I was thinking that, like, there are probably times where showing up as like the true version of yourself is not beneficial, and it's because you're not supposed to be in those rooms. Right? Like, there might be times where, you know, the best version of the story of your life is not that you're this boardroom CEO guy and that you're, you know, something different. But if you keep playing that character and you learn how to play that character well, then you get good enough at it, it just becomes your reality. And I think that that's where you see a lot of people who are like, you know, weekend warriors, and they're living for the weekend and they're trying to escape their job and different stuff. It's because they've gotten really good at putting on whatever those masks are that get them to the boardroom or get them to, you know, whatever their profession is. But then they hate it. It's like you got too good at doing the thing that you were pretending to be. So yeah, do you think that tattooing, do you think that it kind of shelters you from having to be somebody who you're not because you spend so much time in your environment?
Yeah, I think it definitely does, and major in part because there's no one that's really constructing my life. Like I don't have a boss that's telling me what I can and can't do. And if I do, I mean, Chris, he's very loose with the environment. Yeah, there's everything's kind of on me, so that kind of helps me just do me when I don't have much outside noise to have to accept or deny. It's just not even there in the first place, so it's quite simple.
Yeah, that's great.
You know?
That's really great. I think one of the things that's beautiful about that is also what's scary about it, though. It's like when you've got all of that freedom and all of the ability to make your own schedule, it also becomes your responsibility to find out what the optimal version is for you. Like I remember when I first started my business, I left a situation where I was having to get up at 4:45 in the morning and go work out so I could make it up to my job in time. And I was just like, I had no time. So for the first couple months, I was like waking up at 10, I was starting my day at noon, and I was really like leaning into that whole freedom piece, but it was not optimal at all. But I had to learn that. And so I'm curious if you were giving advice to somebody, or if you were trying to give them a piece of perspective, if there's an artist who is coming into a position where they've left their day job or they're going full time on their passion, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over managing your own schedule that you wished you could have learned sooner or passed on to somebody who's in that situation now?
Man, I don't know if you can learn some of these lessons without going through the trials. Like when I stopped playing basketball and suddenly there was nobody telling me what to do anymore, it was the best feeling in the world. Like I felt so free, but I wasn't ready for that amount of freedom to all come at once. So I exactly what you were doing, you know, sleeping until 10. Now you're drinking on Tuesdays and eating whatever you want, just a undisciplined, carefree lifestyle, which felt great until it became like a problem, you know? So yeah, do you have advice on that? Well, I feel like you kind of got to go through it.
Yeah. I'm curious if you think that you almost have to have that phase where you lean into the full expression of what that freedom is, or figure out like, you know, where the end cap of it is before you can truly start to figure out what your ideal balance looks like.
I think so. I think we need to truly live and feel experiences to sometimes understand why we don't want that thing, or why we don't want to live that certain way. If it's just you have an idea of why you shouldn't live that way, it's not as powerful as I've actually been through that, and I know what that feels like. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you think that you would encourage somebody like that to be willing to try different things, or like willing to figure out how each of those different things that they're wondering about actually makes them feel?
Yes, but at the same time, like for me, it was like that freedom led me to drink way too much, and now I'm doing blow on the weekend. Of course, I'm not going to recommend anybody do these activities because you should see what that's like.
Right.
Like I think that's inherent. Like that's self-destructive. Period. But yeah, I don't really know.
Do you think that you needed to go down those roads though to be in the place that you're at now?
I think so. I think it it, it feels right to have lived through or put myself through a bunch of bullshit to really realize like, man, I don't want to live like that. I think if I would have always been real kind of clean lifestyle, and maybe that sort of itch to go crazy and crash out would always be there, and it would subconsciously bother me.
Yeah.
But having like really lived a reckless lifestyle in my early 20s, I think kind of helps me in my day to day to just know and to constantly remind myself why I need to not do what I did in the
For
past.
sure. Yeah, I think it's very useful data points to have, because without knowing what that looks like, I think that there's versions of that for everybody. Sometimes somebody needs to go party for a long time. Sometimes people need to go work 70 hours a week to know what that's like. Some people need to travel a ton to know, that they want to be in a place where they can call home. Like, there's different versions of it for everybody. But I personally think that not exploring, if there's something that's like that, that's really pulling at you, I think that at some point, if you don't explore whatever that is, then it starts to take form as resentment instead of as wonder, or instead of as curiosity. And that resentment sets in where some of those things seem like you should have done them and you never did. And I would almost argue that, if your thing was that you needed to go party hard for a little while and you did it, and that allows you now to be in a position where you have found the craft that you love, you're working 6 days a week, you're making, a move to Minneapolis to as a lifestyle and as a career choice. Like, there's so many things that were positive that were on the back end of that. That yeah, it's really hard because you don't want to give anybody that advice to go like blow your life up or go do some hard shit. But at the same time, it's like it's hard to argue with the results on the back end of that.
Yeah, and it kind of seems almost inevitable for most of us that we end up in these fucked up situations that a lot of us did it to ourselves. Like I put myself in that situation. Of course, a lot of people have more fucked up things happen to them, but alongside, like having put my body and my mind through a bunch of bullshit. Like it makes me more appreciative of the steadiness and the life that I have now.
Right.
Which maybe I probably wouldn't appreciate it as much as if this was always consistent, if I always had money, if I always had a couple friends that I could call and talk to.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like you're in a really cool spot right now, man, where you've got, obviously you've done a lot since you've come back to Billings. I feel like you've honed in your craft a ton. You've obviously developed quite the fan base here, which I'm glad that I've been able to contribute to, because I've been singing your praises since since the first time we got to do some work together. But you're in a spot now where you're about to move to Minneapolis and pursue your career over there, be closer to family. You've got the skill set that you get to take with you. What are the things that you're most excited about right now? After the lessons that you've learned here, after the ways that you've honed your craft in, what are you excited about as you kind of like start this next chapter?
I think just a fresh start in life, and a clean slate. There's something about going to the grocery store here and knowing that I'm gonna see somebody that I know that I don't enjoy. I know a lot of people they love that, the sense of community, but for me here, like I don't feel a strong sense of community. So to go try to find that in a different city, it makes me really excited. Not to say that there's not great people, and I have people here, of course, but I wouldn't say very many. So
okay, what are the things as you look to build that community and like kind of like lay down some roots there? What are the things that that you're looking for as you go into a new place?
I would love it if the stars aligned to where I could find a group of fellow tattoo artists or artists in general that um, share a similar perspective to me, that understand things that maybe other people can't understand. Yeah, I would say that being the main one, just finding like-minded people, and it's cool that there's going to be a bigger pool. I'm not sure about you, but I think I pretty much know of everybody that's sort of doing anything out here. Like, I at least know their name. I've heard about them.
Right.
It's going to be cool to sort of relearn a new community, like I'm sure you're still kind of experiencing here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you enjoy that, sort of figuring out what people got going on in Billings? Yeah,
for sure. I'm very excited for you to be able to do that, because I think your potential as a friend, as a thinker, as an artist, like, there's so many things that I'm excited for you to be able to get fresh perspective on and tap into. I didn't grow up here, and so having moved here and then played football for 4 years, I was almost like insulated by, hanging out with the same people on the sports team all the time and being in school and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I've found the most beneficial about building a career and trying to grow as a person in a place that I'm not from is that I don't have preconceived notions about who people are, what their past looks like, anything like that. So I can meet them exactly where they're at right now. And I know for myself, I'm certainly not the person that I was when I was in junior high or in high school or, any of those things. And I think that it's really special to be able to go to a place where you don't know about people's past and you don't know about a bunch of different things like that, because it gives you a very clean slate to judge somebody's character on. And that's been one of the most exciting things for me is I don't have to worry about the rumor mill that happened during high school, because I wasn't here. That was 6 years before I got here. Like, there's so many different things that I found benefit in. And being a person who's just genuinely curious about people in general, it's been a real treat for me to be able to meet people exactly where they're at right now, instead of have an idea about who they are before I even meet them.
Oh, that's a great point. Do you does that bother you when people attach you to the previous version of yourself, good or bad? Like, obviously.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It's a worst case if it's bad, of course.
For sure. Yeah.
Also, like, you could not really align with even some of the
good parts. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I would say sometimes. I think all of us have had things that we've done in our past that we don't necessarily take a ton of pride in. I think what I'm trying to focus on the most now is what we were talking about earlier, is just like really trying to put my best foot forward and stay aligned with like the person that I want to be. Because if that is true, that I've been honoring the person that I want to be and like staying true to myself, then I think that if people have preconceived notions about who I am, or like are judging me on my past or my recent past, then I think if I've done a good job of being who I say I want to be, then it's probably just a head start. So I think that is one of the inherent benefits of trying to be a good person and trying to show up like yourself, like what you were saying earlier, is that maybe sometimes it like pre-sorts the people that, the people who don't think that they're going to like you maybe don't meet you in the first place. And the people who do think that they're going to like you are going to be more inclined to introduce themselves or to seek you out. So I think that's kind of where I sit on it. But I also have the benefit of, I don't think that there's anybody here that knew me when I was 18.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious how do you look at that as somebody who really, leans into self-expression and being yourself? How does that show up for you when somebody meets you and they've got an idea of who they think you are already?
It definitely tough, especially for in Billings, Montana, my hometown, because I was just a bad, like a fairly bad kid, like not the nicest kid, and through K through 12, just kind of a little bad kid,
Yeah.
So like people kind of just like those bad memories that we give people,
Right.
they hold on to them, and I'm guilty of like identifying or sort of judging somebody's current character for something that they did when they were 14.
Right. Yeah.
So like we're all kind of unfair to each other a lot, and we don't really give each other a fair chance to prove how we've evolved.
Right.
So it's kind of it's disappointing when people sort of attach me to that previous version of myself that I don't align with anymore.
Right.
But it's only human nature, so
For sure.
can't blame people too much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you're looking forward to leaning into? Sorry, or
Stop twitching.
Getting twitchy out here, folks. Is there anything that you're looking forward to leaning into or expressing about yourself when you go to a new city and you've got kind of that blank slate to restart with?
I love the idea that nobody knows me there yet. And so, yeah, that just makes me excited, because I'm totally detached from all the previous versions of myself. And so I can just show up and, it's just a fresh slate. I think.
Yeah.
It feels good.
If you got to paint the picture or maybe put words in somebody's mouth for what they would say when they meet you when you're in Minneapolis, like if they describe who's this dude Jeremiah that you just met, what would be the kinds of things that they would say if like what would you be most excited about for them to say about you?
Ooh.
And about this new version of yourself that you get to really lean into when you get out there?
Ooh, I would hope they say he's got a nice fit on, first and foremost. What else? I just want to be nice, I think that's one of the major focal points in my life right now, as I know it is yours. Just to show up and be kind to people, and the rest will kind of work itself out. Yeah, I don't know. I try not to. I don't really think about stuff like that, anymore. Like, what do I hope this person will think about me? It's just going to be a reflection of their personal experience, what they think about me. So we don't really have much to do with that, huh?
Yeah, true.
Like how other people perceive us is just them.
Okay. So you want to lean into fashion and kindness when you get out there.
Yes.
Is there anything else that feels like it's a potential guiding principle or a guiding thing that you want to lean into?
Guiding principle. We'll come back to me on that one. How about you answer your own question for the summer, this summer? You got a sort of an idea of what the summer's going to look like for you? Because everybody feels good in the summer.
Yeah.
You can capitalize off people feeling good.
That's one of my favorite things about living in a place with 4 seasons is you almost get like a baked in 4 different chapters of the year. Even if it's just like the moods of everybody else around you or the activities that you have available to you. But what I'm the most excited about is really leaning into podcasting this summer. I'm headed out tomorrow morning to go to Boise, which as of right now, neither of my parents know that I'm coming. So I'm really excited to go surprise them and do some pods. I haven't seen my mom in a while, so that'll be fun. So I'm really excited to lean into that. I think that if I continue to commit to this, then I'm going to meet a lot of really cool people this summer, and you never really know what that's going to turn into. Whether it's like opportunities for trips or fun projects or whatever. So I'm really excited to meet some new people this summer. We just got office space for the first time ever. The company, what day is today? The 27th. So actually, my media company turns 3 today. So happy birthday, Storyline Media. Um, so that's really exciting. For the first time ever, we'll have kind of like a company culture that is based on being in person and not like remote work and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to learn about like culture building within a community, and I'm really hoping that I can make you know the lives and the careers of everybody who works on my team like even that much better this summer and see them kind of flourish. So I think I'm just so excited about people this summer, dude. It's I think I can do some really cool things for my team with the media company. I think I'll meet a lot of really cool people with the podcast. And then as we were talking when we were off camera, there's this group of people in Billings right now, and I've just met a lot of really interesting people who have that passion that they light up when you're talking to them about something, whether it's painting or clothing brands or some of these different things, like being around people that have that spark about them. And it seems like for whatever reason right now, there's like a group of those people that are kind of forming and starting to hang out some more. And my buddy Christian and I just started this run club, and a lot of them are like gravitating towards that. So I'm really excited to just like lean into the people side of things and just trust that if I get the right people on the boat, that the winds will take us wherever we need to go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, man. I've had my head down just fucking grinding for so long, trying to get to a place where I'm proud of the business that I built, or I've got enough money coming in where I don't have to worry about, bills or rent or so many different things. And I really just want to enjoy like all of that hard work. Like, yes, some of those goals have happened, but the coolest thing that's happened is that it's brought other people into my circle who also have a passion and who have also worked that hard. So I want to take a couple, even if it's just a couple months, and just enjoy like the people who have begun to come around and make some fun memories with them. Because I mean, especially with you leaving, it's like it's a great reminder that it's finite, that people move, God forbid people die, people, like, so many things happen. So I'm really just trying to, again, I'm just slapping on some more t-shirts and some more hats, but be where my feet are and try to enjoy that a little bit this summer.
I love that. Being somebody who just works really hard at a multitude of things, do you think that you hear a lot of people say, I'm not going to work my life away. I'm not going to do that. No.
Right.
Do you think that most of these people who say that are in a workplace or environment that doesn't serve them? Like they're not doing something that they love for a living. They're not around people that they enjoy. Therefore, they hate work, because we both are kind of working our life away, but it serves so much a purpose for us.
Right.
That we don't think like that. But other people look at us and think, look at that fool.
Yeah,
He's working his life away.
Yeah.
He's going to wake up when he's 80 and regret it all.
Right. Yeah. I think that most people who have that perspective have never said the sentence you said earlier about like tattooing found me. Right? Like I think that when people are intrinsically motivated by their quote unquote work, whether it's their passion for the craft that they do or the lives that they get to transform or something like that, like I think that what it comes down to is a lack of motivation, and not motivation in the David Goggins, like, get motivated, get out of bed, put your shoes on even when you're tired, like not that kind of motivation, but the true, like, I'm motivated by the fact that I get to help people, that I get to progress, that I get to pursue this passion of mine. I think that that's where the gap is that when work feels like something that you're not intrinsically motivated by, or that you don't see like a value in, I think that you should definitely not spend your whole life doing that. But if you are passionate about something that you get to do every day, I couldn't imagine a better thing to spend your life doing than something that you're passionate about, even if you get paid for it.
Right. 100% agree. Like I couldn't imagine my goal to be to retire. Like that, a lot of people that's like a center point goal of their life. Like
Right.
I want to get to a point where I have enough money and stability in my life to where I can not do the thing that I'm doing anymore.
Right.
That's really sad to me.
Me too.
Because I think that's just no way to live, and I think a lot of people just give up looking for the thing. And how are you going to find, or maybe they shut their eyes too,
Right.
to the point where if that thing presents itself, they're not even open to letting it in.
That's really interesting. I think that it takes true work to find what your passion is. And much like you said, is if you're not open to it, or if you're not open to putting yourself in scenarios where you're uncomfortable or trying new things, then you might either not recognize that opportunity when it gets there, or you might not ever discover it in the first place because you're not taking the time to actually go discover it. And I think that you and I, as young as we are both very fortunate that we found the thing that we are passionate about so early. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you have any ideas about how people could be more receptive or more open or put themselves in a position to find that passion or embrace it when it does show up.
I think knowing yourself is so important, because you can sort of weed out possible potential career paths or life paths. Like in order for me to find tattooing, it started with sort of a process of elimination. Like, okay, I know that I don't know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to be under anybody and listen to anybody.
Yeah.
I don't.
That narrows your options down pretty good.
Yeah. That immediately narrowed me down to about, I don't know, a handful of different careers.
Right.
So I was like, okay, like, I don't want to have a boss. I don't want to have a controlled schedule. I don't want to do this, that, and just narrowing it down to, okay, like, I pretty much have to be some sort of creative. So just like, in that sense, knowing myself, knowing what I can and can't tolerate helps me find what I feel I'm meant to do.
Do you think that people are dishonest with themselves when they end up in a job that they hate because they're either not willing to do that work to figure out that they don't want the boss, or that they don't, that they haven't identified the kinds of things that you just said? Do you think that people are dishonest with themselves when they know that they don't like to work under somebody, they don't like to do this and that, but they do it anyways out of some sense of survival or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are just so stuck in life. Like they hate their job and they can't quit their job because they have children to feed.
Yeah.
And, how can you deny that truth? A lot of people, they want to get out of what they're doing, but they actually can't. I would say that it's quite rare. I feel like there's usually a way out.
Right.
But, or it's just extremely difficult, and then you get in too deep to where you've been at the factory for 10 years and it's almost like it's too late. You don't have the motivation anymore. You're getting old. Yeah.
I think it's important to honor that truth early then. Like I find so many times where I'm so grateful that I found the thing early. Like that it didn't take 10 years working in a factory, that I don't have a wife and kids yet, that I don't have all these things, because it could be very, very true that somebody doesn't find their passion until, maybe they're 45 and they go on their first fly fishing trip and they're like, this is the thing. But they've got a 13 and a 15-year-old and they've got a wife and they've got, all this stuff that's going on, and they're in a position where, like you said, they can't do it. And, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that it's such a blessing. It fills me with gratitude every time that I think about having that answer, you know, is like, I know what I want to be doing and what I like. But I would encourage anybody to just like do whatever you can to be honest about it and like do the work to find whatever that thing is, whether it's trying a bunch of different stuff or taking a chance on that idea that you've got in the back of your head, or yeah, really just whatever your version of leaning in is. I think that that's kind of the biggest thing.
Do you think that like getting started with something, you have to be willing to embarrass yourself? Because I think that you do, and it's so hard to get through that time because we hate that feeling so much collectively as humans.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna pop out as the new jeweler in town without making some garbage.
Yeah, for
you know?
sure. For sure.
Like, how was that for you posting your first, your first few months?
I'm still conflicted about it, dude. Like right now, it's like an ongoing conflict for me right now, especially with the podcast stuff because it's I've got this idea about what do people listen to me for, or why do they spend their time following me on social media. Let's just use social media as like the proxy here. It's probably the most public space that we spend time in online. But what gets me about it is like I'm very open during podcasts and during all of this stuff about who I am. And there's for sure people that follow me right now or who might come across my stuff that just say that think that most of what I say is really stupid or really invaluable, which is just fine. But that being said, it's what's conflicting for me right now is how much stuff do I put out and is it of value? And how do I do right by the people who have chosen to like get on board with the train that I'm driving, you know, and like if they're willing to spend their attention and their time listening to the things that I'm saying, like how am I doing justice for that by posting? And what it does for me is it actually makes me hesitate quite a bit because I start to get in this constant loop of, well, is this video good enough that people will find value in it? Or, you know, is this idea profound enough? Or are the cuts in this video smooth enough where somebody's not going to get annoyed by listening to it? So I think that the embarrassment idea really comes out of like, I didn't serve somebody, or I thought that what I was doing is more valuable than it really is. And that tears me up a little bit because I think that that's, it just makes me hesitate a lot. And I end up not putting stuff out when I think that it's potentially going to be something that people don't connect with, I guess.
How do you get feedback? Because most people aren't going to come to you and say, hey, I think your podcast is bullshit.
Yeah, like, true. Very true.
And people are shy to praise because that's also a human thing. Like,
right.
We sometimes are hesitant to say, hey, like, I really rock with what you're doing.
Right. And I also am very hesitant to embrace praise a lot of times, which makes it even tougher to hear that part. And so, yeah, it's tricky, dude. I don't know if I have the answer. I think that the biggest thing is, when I do hear stories or when I do get praise from people who say that, like, you know, this idea really meant a lot to me, or whether it's taking the time to say that in person or if they comment something or anything like that, it's like, it really is. It takes such a small amount of effort from the person doing it, but it makes the journey feel a lot less lonely. And it's like those little rewards that you don't want that to be the reason that you keep going, but a lot of the times it is. It's a huge, like, it's a lot of wind in your sails when you're just kind of like creating and throwing shit out into the ether. So it's, yeah, something as little as like an Instagram comment or as big as somebody coming up in person and being like, hey, this is a cool thing.
Yeah, just get like feeling that bit of validation.
Right.
We all crave that, I think.
Yeah. Where do you get your motivation to keep going? Because there's or I guess like what forms of motivation do you receive that help you keep going?
I think the main one right now is to make my mother proud. I think when I start crying on this shit, yeah, just seeing like reflecting on her body of work that she put up for me and my two sisters growing up, it is still just mind blowing. Like she always made sure that we had food on the table, we're picked up from school on time, uh, on a teacher's salary. Like just so many obstacles, so many reasons she could have not been there, and honestly had a valid excuse why she
Yeah.
couldn't be there.
Yeah.
So I think like just being somebody that she's proud of is the main thing right now. It's not I want to go and be the biggest tattooers. It's more uh,
It's like intangible, maybe.
right,
It's
right.
like, it's like not something that you could particularly
Yeah,
measure.
that's a good way to put it. Not a tangible thing, just a head nod from my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you thought about what that moment might look like, or have you thought about something that she could say or more moment that you guys could have that would make you feel like damn, I did it. I did a good job.
Yeah, anytime she tells me that she's proud of me, it's like it feels incredible because that's one of my main missions right now. Yeah, and I feel like she's the only person that I owe in this world right now on a grand scale. And so yeah, that's my driving force right now, I guess, in my life.
That's a beautiful thing, man. What things in your life right now are you working on that that you think would get you there, that you think that your mom would be proud of?
I think it's more so a character thing, like versus me making a certain amount of money or me attaining a certain amount of status as a tattoo artist. Like she really doesn't care about that.
Right.
She just wants to be proud of her son and like be able to talk about me in a light that's is special to her. So, what's your?
That's a huge goal, man. That's one of the coolest ones I've ever heard.
Thank you, man. How do your parents feel about your tattoo? Here you go.
Yeah, seriously.
Your podcast journey, and did they like kind of turn to raise an eyebrow when you first started?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think that it was helpful that I had another thing going on that has gained some traction. So it's if I didn't have that and I was doing this podcast that has nothing but caused me money, I think that their eyebrows would have lifted a little bit higher. One of the coolest benefits, though, for me for all of this is since I was like 18, outside of sports, I might only see my family twice a year because they live, a 9-hour drive away. And pretty much every year I'd go home for at least one of the winter holidays and then at some point in the summer. And one of the coolest benefits of this podcast is that both of my parents have told me that that it helps them feel more connected to me and to know like the things that I'm thinking about or the people that I'm surrounding myself with and stuff like that. And that feels really special to me because I don't necessarily get 2 hours of undivided conversation to have with my parents every week, but the ability for them to feel like they can still be connected with me with how far away that they are, that feels like a really cool thing. And my dad described it in the funniest way when I came home for Thanksgiving last year. I like came up and gave him a big hug, and he was like, dude, I don't know how to say this, but I didn't really like miss you as much as I used to.
Damn.
And I was like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? And, I probably hadn't seen him since summer. And he's like, well, I listen to your podcast every week and I feel like you're like in the living room and I get to listen to you and like connect and hear what you're thinking about and what you're working on and all this stuff. And I think that that's the coolest thing, that whatever body of work that I put out with all of this stuff makes them feel more connected to me as a person and as a son.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's also a lot of things that I'll say on this podcast that they might not have the perspective or the curiosity or something like that to ask about. So they might there might be a chance that they learn things about me that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And so that's been one of the coolest intangible benefits. And if this podcast never does anything, I think that the ability to connect on a deeper level with my family and with my friends and with people that I care about, I think I mean, that's a win if this is the last episode that ever happens.
100%.
It won't be, because we're doing another one tomorrow. But yeah, man, that would be.
Hey, man, tomorrow's
that's
not
huge.
guaranteed, man.
Tomorrow's not guaranteed. This might be the last one, dude. Yeah, so I think that's it. Well, I got some feedback from a couple episodes that people really like. Some of the boilerplate questions that we used to ask at the Owner's Journal, kind of like wrapping things up, because it's so cool how asking the same questions over and over again can sometimes get such different answers and like highlight cool things about people. But we've kind of been dancing around this one a little bit, so I'll bring this one up first. What does success mean to you? What does it look like to you?
Success looks like a fresh pair of sneakers. No, I'm just kidding. I think just freedom in many different ways, like the freedom to be under very minimal control. So like I'm very grateful I've already, not that it doesn't need to be maintained constantly, but I've already at least achieved the spot where I'm able to now focus on just maintaining so much of what I define as my success. Like nobody's guiding my life. I'm in complete control of at least everything that I can control. I'm able to I'm able to have my simple pleasures at my fingertips. Whenever I want to go out to eat, I can go out to eat. I'm just rambling right now. Tough question.
No, it's cool though. It's interesting because it's interesting to think about so many things that we once said would make us happy and would be a success we have now, and it changes our relationship with it sometimes. I think that one of the trickiest things is actually turning around and being like, oh wait, that thing that I said was success or that would make me successful, I've got that. So like, let's be grateful for it.
I was just thinking about this earlier today, actually, how I'm already so, maybe this is why I had a tough time just answering this question, is because I'm already so used to the lifestyle and like luxuries that I've attained, which is crazy because I shouldn't be used to things that are fresh and new, but we just get used to things so quick.
Right.
Like, weren't able to go out to eat when I was a kid, and now I'm able to go out to eat kind of whenever I want. Like that, how am I used to that?
Right.
When that's quite brand new.
Yeah, it might even be that sometimes like defining success is interesting because you might be there already.
Yeah, I think that's a tough question for me to answer because it's so simple for me. It's not a grand grand achievement or a dream car or having a house or wife and children. It's just like I can go to the store and get some more food right now if I want to. Like I'm rich, you know. I have people that will answer the phone if I call and say that I need something for them, you know. Like that to me is just like I already got it, you know.
Yeah, and you got freedom in your schedule, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I love that. It's such a cool thing. Well, you're being in the spot you're in now. Are you 26?
25.
25. So being 25, you mentioned earlier that you had a childhood where you tried a lot of different shit, ran into a lot of different barriers. What's a piece of advice that you would give 15-year-old you? And whether or not he'd listen, what would you say to him?
He's probably not listening, first and foremost. But I'll tell him to lighten up. I was such an angry kid, and for sometimes no reason. It's just the way that I became through my childhood and just holding on to resentment and not letting go of certain things that I needed to let go. Yeah, I'd tell his ass to relax and not take everything so serious.
Okay. What about a piece of advice that 50-year-old you would turn around and give you right now that you think that you'd need to hear?
Whoa, 50-year-old me. Be a little more careful with your money.
Fair enough. Yeah. I like that one a lot. Okay. Last piece. We don't get to do this with everybody, but one of the funniest things that I love coming and getting tattoos with you and laughing about is the fact that you get asked the same questions over and over and over again each week. So for everybody who's interested in some boilerplate questions that tattooers get asked all the time, we're going to go super rapid fire for these. Number one, what's the most common tattoo you get asked for?
Jesus pieces.
Okay. Number two, what's the most ratchet tattoo you've ever done? And how early in your career was it?
This was about 2 months in.
Okay.
And I did a inside of the lip tattoo, and she bled about 2/3 of a cup of blood, and it was traumatizing.
Brutal. Okay. Leading from that, what's the worst place on the body to get tattooed as far as the most painful?
The nipple.
Ouch. Okay. Are you a supporter and a believer in pain numbing cream for tattoos or raw dogging it?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of raw dogging. It affects the way the ink goes in the skin, so I advise against it.
Okay. Are you do you encourage people to take their tattoos sober or to do anything to take the edge off?
Do it sober.
Okay. Last one. What is the most common question that you get asked other than when did you start tattooing?
Man, what's the front runner? There's a few.
Rattle them
What's
off.
your favorite tattoo?
Okay.
How many tattoos do you have? Yeah, the how'd you get into tattooing? That just blows all of the other questions out of the water.
Should have opened the podcast with that. Got straight into it. Awesome. Well, dude, this has been a ton of fun. The first time that I ever got tattooed by you, I knew that the friendship that we'd have would be special, and it was really cool to, for the first time that we met, to have an undivided 8-hour session where we could just chop it up and the whole thing. But I'm super excited to fly out to Minneapolis and be able to continue this sleeve. I already told myself and everybody who's asked me that nobody else will touch my body with a tattoo gun. And I'm just super excited for you, bro. I've had a really good time with having you here, and I feel like I've learned a lot from you, and we've got a chance to work on a lot of really cool shit together. So definitely proud to know you and proud to call you a friend. But yeah, for anybody who wants to follow you, your journey, and keep up to date with what you're doing, where can they find you, and what's any last messages you want to leave them with?
Also, that was sweet, man. This was a blast, man. First podcast. So
we might have to
run
this one back.
You know, yeah, we might have to run this one back. I did all right. You definitely carried the conversation, helped me out. So I appreciate that. But yeah, where do you find me at? Instagram, man. Jeremiah Tattoos. That's about it, man.
Website
coming soon. Made by yours truly.
Very true. JeremiahTattoos.com.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been a ton of fun, dude. Let's do another one of these. We got a lot of empty skin left on this leg, and we can make a little tradition out of it.
Let's do it. Love.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. You know where to find us if you found us already, and yeah, keep on keeping on. Be where your feet are. Love you.